xTool is launching its newest diode laser, the M2. Now, even though this is a laser, there's also an optional print head so that you could do print and cut projects. I received one early, and I want to take you along with me to see my first experiences with it and hear my first impressions. So let's talk about what came in the box. I received the main part of the laser. I received a 10-watt laser head. Now this is a swappable laser head, and you're going to have other options as well. Now the other things that I received are a power adapter and cable, a smoke exhaust pipe, and you can either vent this out a window or you can get an optional filtration system. And then this is just the clamp to attach that smoke exhaust pipe to the laser. We also have a power adapter and cable. We have a cleaning cloth. We have some materials. We have some masking tape for projects. And then inside here we have a little screwdriver, some screws, that adapter, and then we have 4 magnetic risers. We'll talk about these later. A manual also came in the box, but this is really mainly talking about the specifications. If you end up buying this laser, I would highly recommend that you print out this quick start guide. I've read through it, and it looks like this is going to be really easy to put together. Now, before we put this together, I want to talk about a feature that is very important to me, and that's to have a camera. This laser not only has one camera, you can see the camera right there, that sees the bed of the laser, but it has a second camera right under here, and that's so that you can get close shots. After you take everything out of the laser, it's time to attach the vent tube right here. So here's our vent tube. You just pull it to make it longer. And then you're going to loosen up this clamp. And you can set that right over the vent tube. Now we're going to place that over the area right here. And then this is a very tight fit, but that's how you want it to be. You don't want those fumes to escape. So I have pushed it all the way on that I can. Let's go ahead and move this clamp up. And then I'm just going to tighten this back down. The next thing we'll do is go ahead and install the laser head. And this is super simple to do. Here's the laser module that we're going to install. You can see on the top it says it's the 10 watt. On the bottom, this is where the beam comes out. And then on the back, you have these 2 pin type things. So let's go ahead and open this up. Sorry about that glare. But you can see 2 holes right here, and then these are magnets. I'm just going to put these 2 pins inside those 2 holes. That is all there is to it. And then to get power from the main part of the laser to the laser head, you have this laser module cable. And I failed to show this to you earlier. So you're going to connect one end, and it doesn't matter which end, right into this hole. And then there's a second hole right back here. So we're just going to bend this down and plug it in. Now we're going to connect the 2 parts of the power supply. And I'll plug this into the back of the machine, as well as I'll plug it into power. And there's a little hole right here where you plug that in. And then to power it up, you just press this rocker switch. Now I'll connect the machine to my computer. So this end goes into the machine, right back here in this right corner. And then this end would plug into my computer. Now my computer doesn't use this traditional USB port, so I'll be using this adapter that they included. I installed the software and updated the firmware, and we're ready for some projects. Here's the little magnetic risers that I showed you earlier, and these have taken the place of metal prisms or a honeycomb tray in this laser. You just place them on your material and they magnetize to the base plate. I'm starting my first project with some 1/8 inch basswood, and this is going to be a 3-layer wall hanging for one of my great nephews. In the software, I'm telling the laser to measure the height of my material. To measure it, the laser head slowly comes down onto the material, and just barely touches it to see where it is. Next, I'm telling the machine to activate the camera so that I can see if my design is fully within the basswood. It is, so I let the laser know that I'm ready to process my cut. But before it will cut, I still have to press this button on the front. Once I do that, there's a slight delay, and then the laser takes off. Now, a nice thing about diode lasers is they're more budget-friendly than a CO2 or other type of laser. So if you're a hobby crafter and you want to make items for yourself, your friends, your family, or even sell a few items, a diode laser might be a good option for you. But diode lasers are also much slower than other types of lasers. That's just the nature of a diode laser, and it's a payoff for having a more budget-friendly laser. In the end, this laser did what it was supposed to do, and it did a really nice job of it. This cut is extremely clean, with almost no singeing around the wood on the front or even on the back. For this project, I have 2 more layers to go. This second layer is a green-coated MDF board that I got from xTool. They have these in a variety of really nice colors, and it's so easy to use them and not have to paint your projects. And this also cut out nicely, even with all the intricate cuts of the trees in the design. Now this product does produce more residue than the basswood, so I did clean up the base plate between layers, which is something you want to do when your base plate is messy for safety reasons. The last layer of my project is the top layer of my project, and I'm cutting it out of black-coated MDF board. I'll put this project together using wood glue, and I'll show it to you at the end of the video. For my second project, I'm going to use some black acrylic. This is called Black Frosted Acrylic, and it's also from xTool. It has kind of a matte finish. I'm going to use this acrylic to cut some earrings. Now, we talked about diode lasers being slower than CO2 lasers, but more budget-friendly. Another issue to consider when you're purchasing a laser is whether you want to use that laser to cut much acrylic. Diode lasers can cut through certain colors of opaque acrylic, but they do have their limitations when it comes to acrylic. If acrylic will be something you're very interested in, then a CO2 laser, such as xTool's P2S or P3, might be something to consider. And just like the other things, it looks like these cut out really nicely. Now, I do see something on them, but I think it's just a powdery residue from the acrylic. Now, I'm getting little white soapy bubbles on them from this cleaner, but that residue cleaned up nicely. I'll clean them with water to remove the bubbles and show them to you with earring hardware installed at the end of the video. Next, I want to use the inkjet print module that you can use with the M2. To use it, there's a metal bottom cap retainer plate that you have to attach to the base plate of the laser. To attach it, you remove the existing screw in the left back corner of the base plate, and then you place the hole in this retainer plate over a metal pin that sticks up. That helps you line it up perfectly, and you can now screw down the retainer plate with a different screw that was provided. Now I need to swap out the laser module with the print module. So I'll unplug the laser module, pull on it to remove it from the magnets, put the print module on, lining up the pins with the holes, and then I just need to plug it in using the cable. This swappable module design is really easy to use. When you start the print module, it moves to that retainer plate that we added to the base plate and then lifts up. That allows the retainer plate to keep the bottom cover of the print module from lifting up, and so it exposes where the ink comes out of the print module. Once the print is complete, the print module moves back to that plate that we installed, and the bottom cover of the print module is back in place to protect the ink from drying out. Now that it's time to cut out my print, I'm going to swap out the print module and put the laser module back on. Now the print came out okay, but I would like for it to be a little more vibrant. So I need to play around in the software settings to see if you can boost the vibrancy like you can with the M1 Ultra. Also, because wood is porous, the ink settles down into the wood a little bit and gives it what I think is a retro type look. I'm realizing after doing this project that I should have made my printed design a little larger than my cut design. I'm sure I'll also figure out how to line the designs up better so that I don't have unprinted wood within my cut. Next, I decided to engrave on a tumbler. This rotary attachment that goes in the front right corner of the machine allows you to do that. And you do get a few different types of attachments, so you can do things other than just tumblers. So you slide your tumbler over the plastic pieces that are attached to the chuck, then you tighten it up. After that, you want to make sure that your tumbler is level. Then there's a separate attachment that you can crank up or down to get the tumbler level. Now, I got 2 of these little magnetic levels off of Amazon for just under $5. I love that they're magnetic. It makes putting them on the tumblers very easy. Even though the software walks you through what to do to engrave on a tumbler, I do plan to make a video dedicated to engraving on a tumbler because using a rotary attachment in the software is a little more complex than using the laser on flat blanks like wood, acrylic, and cardstock. So I decided to engrave my logo, but I made it smaller since I was really just wanting to learn the machine and not take a lot of time on this engrave. Now this was my second try at engraving on a tumbler on the M2. You might see on the back of this tumbler a little bit of engraving, but I didn't tighten down the chuck attachment correctly on my first attempt and my tumbler slid off. That's another thing that I'll go through in the video on engraving a tumbler. When I engrave on tumblers, I love to use a product called Awesome. For me, it really cuts through the residue that's left behind, and it does a great job of cleaning the tumbler. I was really happy with how this engrave came out, but after I cleaned my tumblers with Awesome, then I used water and a magic eraser to really shine them up. Here's what it looked like after that second cleaning. This engrave is really beautiful. Now let's take a look at the projects, and I'll give you my thoughts on this laser. First of all, I think the wall sign for Tucker turned out great. And I think the earrings and the tumbler turned out great as well. Now remember, I did a small design on the tumbler just to learn the process of how this laser and the rotary attachment work and to see how well it would engrave. The print and then cut keychain turned out okay, but printing on wood really isn't a high priority for me. If it is for you, the process was easy and it did a nice job. But just know that printing on wood doesn't give the same print quality that something like printing on sticker paper would. Now let's talk about the pros and the cons. Let's start with the features that I really liked about this machine. First of all, putting everything together wasn't difficult and it came with some pretty good instructions. Now I do have several lasers, so of course the learning curve was less for me. But all in all, I think this was a really easy laser to put together. Second of all, the software is pretty easy to use, the laser is really easy to use, and I think it's a good beginner-friendly laser. Third of all, everything that I cut really nicely. The machine did its job, and it did its job well. Next on the list, I love that this laser has built-in air assist. There's no motor and tubes to attach, and nothing extra to buy. And one of my favorite features was that the swappable modules are easy to change out. And lastly, having the ability to print and then cut is a nice feature. It's just not something that's high on my priority list for when I use lasers. So now let's talk about the cons. And the cons for me mostly have to do with it being a diode laser. So diode lasers are very beginner friendly, they're very budget friendly, but you do lose some flexibility, especially when it comes to cutting acrylic. In addition, a diode laser is simply slower than a CO2 laser. The last con that I see is I wasn't really a big fan of those little risers. I would much rather see a honeycomb tray in this package, but I have picked up honeycomb trays off of Amazon before for other lasers that I didn't get them with, and they're fairly affordable. So thank you so much for joining me today. If you have any questions, comments, or suggestions, leave them in the comments section below. And if you're interested in an M2, I'll have my affiliate link in my video description as well. Thanks again for joining me, and I hope to see you in my next video.